Never-Ending Narratives presents The Human Trigger, written by hero protagonist. Chapter 2. The Meat Grinder. The memory tasted of sulfur and static charge, a phantom sting that bit harder than the Sector 4 vents. Zero watched the bot's cooling fluids pool on the deck plates and saw Rook's blood instead.
"You're grinding the rail again, Zero,"
Rook had said. He was leaning against the airlock of the high roller, buffing the white ceramic finish of a Cognis smart carbine with a piece of silk.
"Think you'll be done jacking that thing off before we even dock?"
Zero didn't stop the rhythmic scrape of the whetstone.
"The magnetic track on the Saya has a 3-millisecond delay. I need the friction to be 0. I don't trust the magnets. I don't trust the ship. And I definitely don't trust that bone-white toy in your lap."
Rook tapped the glowing green soul-locked seal on the carbine's receiver. It pulsed with a rhythmic, haptic beat. A digital heartbeat synced to his own.
"Cognis Engineering says this tracks a heartbeat through a meter of reinforced concrete. No AI, just my intent, amplified. This job is my ticket to the upper ring. No more smog, no more recycled water. Real sunlight, young man, a worthwhile retirement plan."
"It's that damn accountability mandate, Rook,"
the scrapper said, looking up. The whetstone went silent.
"The law requires every weapon to phone home to a Cognis server before it fires. That gun is a leash. The tech was designed to monitor you. If Cognis decides your pulse is a liability, that weapon bricks."
"Then it's a good thing we're the best contractors they've got,"
Kilo called out from the back, her hands buried in the guts of a thermite charge.
"Silas, tell the boy the math. He's making me nervous with that doomsday talk."
Silas didn't turn from the pilot's console. He sat rigid, his eyes glazed in the milky white sheen of a deep data trance. Unlike the others, Silas was a pure, his brain genetically tuned for data processing rather than augmented with chips.
"The route is verified. We are hitting the primary geothermal coupler for the Helios 7 manufacturing spire. Our client wants the facility offline for 18 months. The security mesh is on a subroutine loop. There are no variables. Only the payout."
"There's always a variable,"
Zero muttered. He slid the lobotomizer into the Saya. Snacked. The magnetic lock caught with a heavy industrial thud. The high roller fired its maneuvering thrusters, drifting sideways through the hydrocarbon smog of Sector 1. Its triple-engine turbojets pulsed, fighting the thin atmosphere like an electric eel thrashing in dark water. Its thermal masking engines hummed a low, undetectable vibrato, intaking superheated gas and blasting it out in a slick, aerodynamic wake. Below them, the sprawl was a canyon of neon and misery. But ahead, the golden spire pierced the cloud layer like a needle of pure avarice. It was a monolith of gilded durasteel, the headquarters of the Cognis treasury, wreathed in a perpetual halo of pressurized steam vents that kept the plebeian atmosphere from corroding its shine. Silas brought them in on a silent vector, docking the transport at a service port usually reserved for waste disposal. The airlock cycled with a hiss of decontamination gas. The transition to the Golden Spire was a blur of pressurized steam and the metallic tang of recycled air.
"Perimeter active,"
Kilo whispered, her voice a whisper over the subvocal comms. She moved ahead, a wraith in matte gray cam weave. 2 corporate sentries stood by the lift cluster, their helmets scanning for thermal signatures. "I can't see shit from this deck," one guard muttered, his voice filtered through a cheap voice amp. "Nothing but smog. I could piss in the wind and not see the stream." "Quit whining," the second guard replied, checking his pulse rifle. He was one of the voluntary debt slaves who sold their faces to the company for a clean slate. The pay is at least 5 times your average wage slave working in one of the world-spanning megacities, and the benefits coverage would see your next of kin sitting pretty if anything was to happen. I'd stare at a brick wall for 20 years if it meant my kids could afford a hab block in the orbital ring. Fair point, the first guard sighed. Still, wouldn't mind seeing the sun once in a... Kilo ignored her sidearm. She moved with the silent, fluid grace of a spider, descending from the ceiling on a monofilament line. Her stealth field shimmered, blending perfectly with the smog. As the rear guard turned, she yanked him upward. The garrote snapped tight around his throat, cutting off his scream before it started. His legs twitched helplessly in the air, his eyes rolling back to expose white orbs as the wire bit deep, saliva and blood running down his chin. She secured the anchor, leaving him suspended like a gruesome ornament. The front guard turned, sensing the movement, but saw nothing. He scanned the empty corridor, his rifle raised. He looked up too late. Kilo dropped behind him, her hand clamping over his mouth as a nanocarbon dagger punched through his armor and into his spine.
Lift clear. 0, you're up.
0 stepped over the bodies, checking his corners.
I'm close enough to check the network for vulnerabilities and make sure we don't pop up on any sensors.
No need. Our man Silas jammed the local sensors.
Rook said, his confidence radiating like heat.
Sit back and watch us pros work, kid. Smooth as fast.
Then the lift doors chimed. A squad of heavy response troops poured out, shields raised.
Contact!
Rook yelled. The hallway erupted. Rook dropped to one knee, the white Cognis carbine singing a high-pitched staccato rhythm, thwip, thwip, thwip. The carbine's tracking system was flawless. Every round found a gap in the approaching guard's armor. Neck, visor, knee joint. Rook moved with the urgency of a trained soldier, trusting the digital readouts of his rifle's scope implicitly. His helmet's visor pointed out targets faster than a normal human eye could register. The first guard's right knee exploded, the round bypassing the standard armor of an expendable employee of Orbital Dynamics, Cognis's main rival. The second shot found the guard's right occipital orb and exploded out the back of his helmet, silencing him forever. The third guard's left elbow shattered, dislodging the bone and eliciting a pained scream as his rifle veered off target, spraying rounds into the wall. A follow-up shot crashed through his mouth, shattering teeth and sending him reeling to the floor. The fourth guard took a hit to the side, stumbling as Rook's sixth bullet found its mark, jerking him back as he slumped dead.
We need to move those pretty asses to the vault, people,
Rook shouted, reloading.
The situation is going tits up and we need to be out of here before everything is fucked up beyond repair, which is yesterday.
Alarms blared, a rhythmic, deafening klaxon. Red lights washed the gold walls in blood.
Vault access in 10 seconds.
Kilo shouted, slapping a breaching charge onto the massive blast doors.
Cover me.
0 deflected a stray plasma bolt with the flat of his sheath, the magnetic field sparking. He didn't waste movement. He drew the odachi in a blur of motion, a lateral draw that decapitated the guard rushing him. The blade hummed, hungry. He pivoted, slashing through the receiver of the next guard's rifle and the armor plating beneath, shearing the guard horizontally in half. The superheated edge seared the wound instantly as the lower half hit the floor knees first, the upper half rolling across the ground, groaning in shock. The third guard, terrified, sprayed and prayed, but missed every shot. 0 kicked off a marble pillar, using the momentum to drive the heavy blade through the chest of the attacker who was turning to run.
Charge set to 15 minutes.
Kilo yelled.
Let's Delta before the reactor turns this place into a hellscape,
Rook replied. Then the klaxons cut out. The lights died. The gunfire stopped. The world was silent. Rook screamed as the weapon and his helmet let out a pathetic electronic whine. The green seal on the carbine turned a jagged, pulsing red. The Cognis firmware locked and the equipment went offline.
My HUD,
Rook gasped, stumbling as his targeting optics, linked to the carbine sensors, dissolved into gray static.
I'm fucking blind.
Switching to proximity chat. I have gear for situations like this when connection is knocked out. I'll cover the team 6 as we exfil.
Zero yelled without using comms.
All right, everyone, I'll take point. We're heading to the ship.
Rook yelled, pointing toward the docking bay viewport. Keo looks up and shouts,
The high roller. It's dusting off.
Zero looked. The ship was already undocking, its engines flaring blue as it peeled away into the smog.
Silas.
He growled.
Can Silas do that?
Zero said, looking around for a new exit strategy. Then the ceiling vents hissed open. The cleaners unfolded from the vents with a terrifying, frictionless grace. No hydraulic hiss, no mechanical whine. Just the wet, heavy slap of bare, carbon-grafted feet on the deck plates. They were silent hunters in a world of screaming machines. 7-foot-tall biological anomalies fueled by synthetic hemoglobin and skin grafted with subdermal carbon mesh. No cybernetics. No hackable limbs. Just raw, genetically perfected violence.
Cleaners.
Rook screamed, diving behind a transport crate. A cleaner's frantic rush caught him mid-air. Without his armor's active integrity fields, which had also bricked, the ceramic plates shattered like glass. The long rake turned his torso into a spray of red mist before he even hit the ground. Kilo, no longer camouflaged, didn't even scream. A cleaner's massive form emerged from the high gallery and took her before she could touch the deck cord, followed by yells of anguish and gurgling blood as it eviscerated her body, splattering entrails across the ground. Zero dove, sliding behind a heavy Durasteel pillar as the corridor filled with death. A cleaner turned toward him, its unnaturally pale eyes tracking him with the cold focus of a predator. Zero leaned into the flow.
Remember your training.
He saw it in slow motion, the cleaner coming at him with a wild fury of claws, unrefined but brutal. He parried the claw with his sheath, simultaneously flashing the heated blade out to dismember the monstrosity's arm. He spun to duck the remaining claw and slammed the odachi samurai style behind him past his left side, rolling forward to bisect the creature behind him. Its 2 pieces fell to the floor. Emerging from the roll, Zero continued into a sprint, flashing the blade once again to behead the foe, savaging Kilo's dead form on his way to Rook. He reached Rook just in time to vertically slice the cleaner in the midst of disemboweling him. Rook looked up with bloody teeth, holding his stomach, slumped against the pillar.
Listen, kid, you gotta get out of here. There's no time. I'm recommending a new exfil. You have to find the garbage disposal and exfil into the wastes. It'll be dangerous, but there are people that have built a massive city around the factory and call that place home. I'm recommending you steal transport and Delta out of here. This place is huge, and you'll need to clear the area unless you want to meet up with me at the pearly gates.
Zero didn't have time to argue. A different type of cleaner, this one female, humanoid, and decked out in leather-like gear, pulled up in a grav skimmer, surrounded by drones. She was curvaceous, almost pornographic in her design, like a flesh-feed star built for murder. She looked amused at Zero's sheathed odachi as he slowly stood up from Rook's dying form, keeping his eyes trained on her. The drones hovered like paparazzi, recording the scene. She threw her pistol to the ground and began to brandish 2 massive electrified combat daggers, beckoning Zero to attack. Her genetically enhanced muscles coiled like high-tension cables.
Nice recording rig.
Zero spat, his hand resting on the hilt of the odachi.
Hope your subscribers like snuff films, because I'm not dying today.
Rook gurgled a bloody laugh behind him.
Damn, kid. You think you're a real badass. Get the fuck out of here.
Zero judged the distance. She was fast, faster than any human. A close-quarters predator. She needed to be within 3 feet to end him. Zero had 5. He pivoted from behind the pillar, the lobotomizer clearing the saya in a massive horizontal sweep. The 5-foot arc of violet plasma created a literal no-man's land. The lady assassin remained still, studying the blade's vector mid-air, her hyper-reflexes twitching as she became a blur. The blade whistled through the air, but instead of feeling his blade hit subdermal mesh and heart, Zero noticed the cleaner was gone. She was behind him. One dagger plunged into the heart of the shocked rook, who looked up at her breast in mild amusement, dying with a grin on his face as the light left his eyes. Her other dagger was held nonchalantly against her waist as she looked down at the dying man. Zero, awkwardly stuck in a samurai-pose thinking he came out the victor, turned around to see the display of Rook's death. Zero didn't waste a microsecond. He dove into the vehicle, his deck screaming a denial of service attack not at the ignition, but at the drones.
Blind the audience.
The camera feeds glitched into static. The lady cleaner paused, her high-tension muscles uncoiling as her burst speed hit its thermal limit. She didn't chase. She laughed, annoyed but amused, treating his escape like a commercial break. The chase would generate better numbers anyway. The chase was a blur of neon and adrenaline. Zero pushed the stolen transport to its limit, weaving through the labyrinthine spires of the factory complex. He smashed through a glass atrium, flying through the lobby of an administrative building, the vehicle smoking and sparking. Then, the world turned white. Kilo's charge detonated. There was a blinding ultraviolet bloom in his rear view as the geothermal coupler bypassed its safety limiters. The Helios 7 spire groaned, the massive geothermal conduits buckling under the thermal thunderclap that hit the grav skimmer like a physical hammer.
Don't fail me now!
Zero hissed, white-knuckling the controls of the stolen skimmer. Even with its high-end stabilizers, the vehicle bucked as the shockwave overtook it. The pressure wall slammed into the skimmer's rear, shoving the luxury craft forward with a violent, bone-jarring lurch. Every window in the surrounding megacity block was pulverized, turning the air into a shimmering cloud of glass needles. Warning: stabilizer failure. EMP interference detected.
Shut up, I know!
Zero yelled over the roar of the atmospheric displacement. The drones chasing him weren't as lucky. Without a pilot's twitch instincts to compensate for the surging magnetic fields, their logic cores fried in the EMP backlash. He watched 3 of them tumble out of the sky in his periphery, spinning like dead flies. The skimmer was fighting him, its high-performance turbines screaming a high-pitched death rattle. Crashing out of the first building, Zero saw the 7th-floor glass of the next building looming. Even with the engine redlining, he didn't have the altitude to clear it.
Hold together,
he whispered, bracing his magnetic boots against the dash. Crash! He smashed through the glass, the sleek skimmer skidding across a marble lobby in a spray of sparks and expensive office furniture. Zero rolled out of the leather seat before the vehicle even stopped moving.
Dummy loop! Now!
He wheezed. The skimmer's engine flared one last time as the remote command took over, sending the empty, smoking luxury wreck back out the far window to give the remaining security a ghost to chase. He turned toward the maintenance access, his lungs burning.
Move, Zero!
Zero sprinted past a blur of panicked employees. They were white-collar drones, frozen in shock or diving under desks as alarm sirens wailed overhead. He didn't slow down. When a heavy wood-grain executive door barred his path, he didn't reach for the handle. He drew his sword. The violet plasma edge hummed for a fraction of a second, shearing the locking mechanism into molten slag. He kicked the door open, shoulder-checking his way through a smoke-filled conference room and heading for the main lobby. 2 building security guards, not the genetically modified cleaners, just men in cheap blue Kevlar, stood between him and the street exit. They looked terrified, their hands shaking as they fumbled for their tasers. Zero dropped into a slide, his magnetic boots slicking across the polished floor, sweeping the first guard's legs out from under him. In the same fluid motion, he used the heavy pommel of his sheathed sword to jab the second man in the solar plexus. Both were down, gasping for air, but alive.
Stay down.
Zero rasped, not looking back as he burst through the rotating glass doors. By the time he hit the street and disappeared into the unwashed asses of the masses, he was a shadow. He threw a handful of chips at a street vendor, grabbed a hoodie, and ducked into an alley to loop the local security feeds. It was only when he finally sat down that the cold set in. He reached for his midriff, and his hand came back slick. Deep, arterial red.
Clean cut.
He muttered, his voice cracking as he stared at the smog.
She was faster than I expected.
He lay there in the dark, the smell of street food and garbage disposal assaulting his nostrils. Rook was gone. Kilo was gone. Zero's mind drifted off into the dark, listening to the distant rhythmic scream of the sirens. 3 months later. The Sector 4 slums were a good place to disappear. Zero adjusted his grip on the lobotomizer, the familiar weight the only thing grounding him. He'd spent the last 90 days scrubbing his digital footprint, living off scrap and low-level bounties, waiting for the heat to die down, but the heat never really died. It just waited for you to make a mistake.
Heads up, samurai!
Cass's voice chirped in his ear. A new voice, a new contract, a new beginning.
I spent 3 weeks decrypting their patrol algorithms to find this gap, so try not to waste my time.
Zero smirked, tapping his temple. The game hadn't changed, just the players. This has been a Never-Ending Narratives production, The Human Trigger, written by hero protagonist. Thank you for listening. New chapters arrive weekly. Stay tuned.